The thing about truth or dare is that it stops being a game the moment someone decides to hurt you with it. I learned that lesson at 34, sitting in my own living room, watching my wife Nira announce her choice like she was ordering dessert. "I choose Aidan," she said, her voice carrying across our open-plan house with crystal clarity. The circle of friends went quiet, that particular kind of silence that happens when everyone knows something terrible is about to unfold. Aidan Fox, my college roommate, the guy who'd been my best man 3 years ago, who came to our barbecues, who borrowed my tools and never returned them. He sat there grinning like he'd just won the lottery, his perfect teeth gleaming under our recessed lighting. "For the dare," Nira continued, and I could hear the alcohol in her voice, but also something else. Something deliberate. "I dare you to show everyone what a real man looks like." The laughter that followed felt like broken glass in my ears. Maya, Nira's best friend, nearly choked on her wine. The other couples exchanged glances, some amused, others uncomfortable, but nobody stopped it. Nobody said, "Hey, maybe this isn't appropriate." I stood up slowly, my engineering mind already calculating angles and outcomes. The smart home system I'd installed myself tracked everything, who came and went, when lights turned on, even the temperature fluctuations from body heat. Data was my business. Evidence was my specialty. "Come find me when the game's finally over," I said, my voice steady, despite the rage building in my chest like steam in a pressure cooker. I walked toward the door without looking back, leaving my jacket draped over the chair. Let them think I was running away. Let them think I was the weak one. The November air hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. Clarity came with the cold. I walked the 50 feet to our neighbor's building, a luxury complex that mirrored our own. Lila Morrison lived in the penthouse, and we'd served together on the Homeowners Association board for 2 years. I knocked once. When she opened the door, her sharp eyes took in my situation immediately. Lila was 42, divorced, and had the kind of intuition that came from surviving her own marital disasters. "Colby? Everything all right?" "I need to use your guest bedroom for a few hours," I said. "There's a situation at my place." She stepped aside without another word. That's the thing about people who've been through their own wars. They recognize the walking wounded. The guest bedroom faced our house perfectly. I could see right into our living room through the floor-to-ceiling windows I'd been so proud of when we bought the place. Transparency, I'd called it then. Now it felt like living in a fishbowl. I turned on every light in Lila's guest room and pulled out my phone. The group chat was already buzzing with messages, but I ignored them. Instead, I opened the location-sharing app and sent my coordinates to the entire party. Then I sat down to watch the show. Through the windows, I could see Nira and Aidan in the center of the circle. She was leaning into him now, her hand on his chest, and the dare had apparently evolved into something more intimate. The other guests were cheering them on like spectators at a sporting event. My watch buzzed with notifications, text messages, missed calls, social media tags, the digital breadcrumbs of my humiliation spreading in real time. But I left everything visible, every status update, every location ping. Evidence. 20 minutes passed before Nira noticed the lights in Lila's window. I watched her squint across the distance, then grab her phone. The realization hit her face like a physical blow. She said something sharp to Aidan, who looked confused. Then she was moving, pushing through the crowd, heading for the door. Aidan followed, still grinning like this was all part of the game. I heard them in the hallway before they reached Lila's door. Nira's voice, high and angry. Aidan's, trying to calm her down. "Colby!" Nira pounded on the door. "Open up! This is ridiculous!" Lila appeared in the bedroom doorway, her expression grim. "Want me to let them in?" "Just Nira," I said. "And only for a minute." Lila opened the door, and Nira burst through like a hurricane, her designer dress wrinkled, her makeup slightly smeared. Aidan tried to follow, but Lila blocked him, with the kind of authority that came from years of dealing with entitled men. "What the hell are you doing?" Nira demanded, her voice shaking with fury. "It was just a game. It didn't mean anything." I held up my phone, showing her the group chat. 43 messages in 20 minutes, screenshots of her and Aidan, jokes about the happy couple, speculation about how long this had been going on. "Looks pretty real to everyone else," I said calmly. "You're being dramatic," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "Come back to the party. We'll laugh about this tomorrow." "Will we?" I asked. "The way you laughed when Maya dared you to kiss him? Or the way you laughed when Jennifer asked if he was better than me?" Her face went pale. She hadn't realized I could hear everything from across the street. "Colby, please." "Leave," I said quietly. "Take your friend with you. Go back to your game." "This is insane. You're my husband." "Then act like I'm your husband instead of treating me like a joke in front of our friends," Aidan's voice carried from the hallway. "Nira, come on. He's just being sensitive. Let him cool off." That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not broke. Shifted. Like a gear clicking into a different position. "Lila," I called out. "Please lock the door behind them." Nira stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for something she didn't find. Then she turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the hardwood. I heard the lock engage, then Lila's footsteps returning. "You okay?" she asked. I looked out the window at my house where the party continued without me. Nira was back in the circle, Aidan's arm around her shoulders now, no longer pretending it was just a dare. "I will be," I said. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I meant it. The game was over, but mine was just beginning. The next morning came with the kind of clarity that only follows complete humiliation. I woke up in Lila's guest room at 6 a.m., my internal clock refusing to acknowledge that my entire life had shifted overnight. Through the window, I could see my house looking exactly the same as always, pristine, expensive, empty of meaning. Nira's car was gone. No surprise there. Lila knocked softly on the door, then entered with coffee and the kind of knowing look that said she'd been through this particular nightmare herself. "She left around 2, Lila said, settling into the chair by the window. "Took a suitcase." I sipped the coffee, grateful for something to do with my hands. "Did she say anything? To me?" "No, but I heard her on the phone in the hallway. Something about staying with Maya until you came to your senses." I almost laughed. Come to my senses, as if recognizing my wife's public betrayal was some kind of mental breakdown. "I should probably go back," I said, but made no move to leave the chair. "Should you?" Lila asked. "Or do you think you should figure out what you're actually dealing with first?" Smart woman. Divorced for 3 years, she'd learned the hard way that assumptions could destroy you in situations like this. I pulled out my phone and opened the smart home app I'd designed myself. Every door, every window, every motion sensor in our house reported to a central system. I'd built it for security, but now it felt like archaeology, digging through the digital remains of my marriage. The data painted a picture I'd been too trusting to see before. Motion sensors in the living room at odd hours, when Nira claimed to be working late. The front door opening and closing during times when she was supposedly at the gym. Temperature fluctuations in our bedroom during the day when I was at client meetings. "How long have I been an idiot?" I asked, more to myself than to Lila. "Probably not as long as you think," she said. "People like Nira are good at hiding things, until they decide they don't want to hide anymore." That was the truth of it, wasn't it? Last night hadn't been a mistake or a moment of weakness. It had been a declaration. Nira had chosen to humiliate me publicly because she'd already decided I didn't matter enough to protect. My phone buzzed with a text from Benji Torres, my business partner, and the closest thing I had to a best friend since Aidan had apparently switched sides. "Heard about last night. Coffee? I have information you need." I showed Lila the message. She nodded approvingly. Go, she said. But Colby, whatever you decide to do next, make sure it's something you can live with. I met Benji at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar that served coffee strong enough to wake the comatose. It was the kind of place where construction workers grabbed breakfast before dawn and day drinkers started their descent before noon. Perfect for conversations you didn't want overheard. Benji was already there, his massive frame folded into a corner booth, 2 cups steaming on the table between us. Ex-military like me, but he'd gone into private security instead of engineering. His clients included half the wealthy families in our area, which meant he heard everything worth knowing. So, he said without preamble, how long have you known about your wife and Fox? The directness hit me like a physical blow. I didn't. Until last night. Really? Benji's expression shifted from sympathy to something harder. Because they've been pretty obvious about it. Maya's been running her mouth at the country club for weeks. Nira and Aidan this, Nira and Aidan that. I figured you knew and were just handling it quietly. I stared into my coffee, processing this. What exactly has Maya been saying? That Nira's getting tired of being married to a project manager when she could be with someone who understands her ambitions. That Aidan gets her in ways you never could. That she's planning to make some changes soon. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Changes. Her word, not mine. But Colby? Benji leaned forward. There's more. Aidan's been asking questions about your business, specifically about your client contracts and whether you have any kind of non-compete agreements. That got my attention. My security consulting business was small but profitable, built on relationships I'd cultivated over 5 years. If someone wanted to damage me professionally, targeting those relationships would be the most effective approach. What kind of questions? Whether your clients would follow you if you had to relocate, whether you have any legal vulnerabilities, whether your military clearance could be challenged. Benji's voice was grim. Sounds like someone's planning to push you out of town. The pieces clicked together with mechanical precision. Nira's sudden interest in my work schedule. Her questions about which clients I was meeting with. Her suggestion that maybe I should consider expanding to other markets. They're planning to take over my life, I said slowly. Looks that way. But here's the thing, Colby. They're not nearly as smart as they think they are, and they have no idea what you're capable of when you stop playing nice. He was right about that. Nira had married the polite version of me, the one who fixed things quietly and avoided confrontation. She'd never met the version who'd spent 2 tours in Afghanistan solving problems that couldn't be fixed with diplomacy. What are you thinking? Benji asked. I pulled out my phone and opened the smart home app again. 3 months of data, all time-stamped, all admissible in court if it came to that. But courts were slow, and public humiliation was immediate. I'm thinking they want to play games, I said. So let's play. Benji grinned, and for the first time since last night, I felt like I might actually enjoy what came next. The game was over, but the reckoning had just begun. Planning revenge, I discovered, was a lot like engineering a security system. You had to think like your target, anticipate their moves, and always have a backup plan for when things went wrong. The difference was that this time, I was designing something meant to fail, specifically to make Nira and Aidan's carefully constructed lies collapse under their own weight. I spent the rest of Monday in Lila's guest room, which had become my temporary command center. She'd offered to let me stay as long as I needed, and I was grateful for the distance from my own house. From here, I could observe without being observed, plan without interruption. The first step was information gathering. I'd spent 5 years building a network of contacts in security and investigation, and it was time to call in some favors. Benji arrived at noon with a laptop bag and the kind of focused energy that meant he'd already started working. Your wife's been busy, he said, spreading printed documents across Lila's dining table. Bank records, credit card statements, phone logs, all legally obtained, by the way. She signed a joint account agreement that gives you access to everything. The papers told a story that was both predictable and infuriating. Hotel charges during her supposed business trips, expensive dinners for two on nights when she claimed to be working late, a jewelry purchase from last month that I'd never seen her wear. But this is the interesting part, Benji said, pointing to a series of cash withdrawals. 500 here, 300 there. Always from ATMs near Aidan's apartment building. Someone's been planning something that requires untraceable money. I studied the pattern. The withdrawals had started 3 months ago, right around the time Nira had begun asking questions about my business. What do you think they're planning? Best guess? They're going to accuse you of something that requires you to leave town quickly. Domestic violence, maybe, or some kind of professional misconduct. Something that would make your clients drop you and force you to start over somewhere else. It was elegant, in a sociopathic way. Destroy my reputation, take over my client base, and leave me with no choice but to disappear quietly. Nira would get the house, the social circle, and the life she wanted, while Aidan would get my business contacts and professional relationships. How long do you think we have? Not long. Maya's been telling people that Nira's going through a difficult time and might need to protect herself soon. That's usually code for restraining orders and police reports. I felt that familiar shift inside me again, the one that had gotten me through 2 combat deployments. When someone was planning to destroy you, the only rational response was to destroy them first. All right, I said. Let's give them what they want. Benji raised an eyebrow. Meaning? They want me to disappear? Fine, but I'm taking them with me. The plan we developed over the next 6 hours was beautifully simple. Instead of defending against their attack, we were going to accelerate it, force them to move before they were ready, and make sure their lies collapsed in the most public way possible. Step 1 was the easiest. I called my office and told my assistant I was taking a few personal days to deal with a family emergency. Then I sent a carefully worded email to my 3 biggest clients, explaining that I might need to refer them to other consultants due to unexpected personal circumstances. Within an hour, my phone was ringing. Word traveled fast in our industry, and by evening, half the security consultants in the state would know that Colby was having some kind of crisis. Step 2 required more finesse. I drove to Aidan's apartment building and waited in the parking garage until he came home from work. When he saw me leaning against his car, his face went through a fascinating series of expressions: surprise, guilt, fear, and finally, artificial confidence. Colby, hey man, look, about last night. Relax, I said, holding up my hands in a gesture of peace. I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to apologize. That caught him off guard. Apologize. For making things weird. Nira told me it was just a game, and I overreacted. You guys have been friends for years, and I let my insecurity get the better of me. Aidan's relief was almost comical. Oh, wow. Yeah, man, it was totally innocent. Just party stuff, you know? I know, and I want to make it right. Actually, I was hoping you could help me with something. Sure, anything. I'm thinking about surprising Nira with a weekend getaway. You know her better than anyone. Where do you think she'd want to go? For the next 10 minutes, Aidan enthusiastically helped me plan a romantic trip for the wife he was sleeping with. He recommended restaurants, suggested activities, even offered to help me pick out jewelry. It was a masterclass in sociopathic compartmentalization, but more importantly, he revealed details about Nira's preferences that he shouldn't have known. Her favorite wine, which she only drank on special occasions. The specific type of massage she preferred, which I'd never heard her mention. The fact that she hated roses but loved peonies, something I'd somehow missed in 3 years of marriage. By the time I left, I had enough ammunition to destroy both of them. But I also had something else, confirmation that this wasn't just about the game last night. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I drove home for the first time since Sunday night, using my key to enter through the back door. The house felt different, like a stage set after the actors had gone home. Everything was in its place, but the life had drained out of it. Nira's laptop was still on the kitchen counter, connected to our home network. She'd never been particularly careful about digital security, trusting me to handle all the technical details. That trust was about to become her biggest mistake. It took me less than 20 minutes to access her email accounts, social media profiles, and cloud storage. What I found there was worse than I'd imagined. Screenshots of our joint bank account balances, sent to someone named A, with heart emojis. Photos of our house, inside and out, with comments about after the renovation. A draft email to her lawyer asking about options for protecting assets during a difficult divorce. But the worst was a video file, dated 3 weeks ago. Nira and Aidan in what looked like a hotel room, discussing their plans with the casual cruelty of people who'd never considered that their victim might fight back. "He's so predictable," Nira was saying, her voice clear on the recording. "He'll try to be reasonable, try to work things out. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll have everything we need." "And you're sure he won't fight back?" Aidan asked. "Colby? He's never fought for anything in his life. He'll roll over and disappear just like he always does." I closed the laptop and sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and smiled for the first time in days. They were right about one thing. I was predictable. But they'd made the classic mistake of confusing patience with weakness. The game was about to begin in earnest, and this time I was setting the rules. Tuesday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched my mood perfectly. I'd spent the night in my own bed for the first time since Sunday, but sleep had been elusive. Every sound in the house seemed amplified, every shadow looked wrong. It was amazing how quickly a place could stop feeling like home. Nira hadn't come back, but her presence lingered in the small details she'd left behind. A coffee cup in the sink with lipstick on the rim, her favorite sweater draped over a chair, the book she'd been reading bookmarked halfway through a chapter she'd never finish. I was documenting everything with my phone's camera when Benji arrived with breakfast and news. "Your wife's been busy," he said, spreading takeout containers across the kitchen island. "She filed a police report yesterday afternoon." That got my attention. "What kind of report?" "Suspicious behavior from her estranged husband. Claims you've been following her, that she's afraid for her safety." Benji's expression was grim. "It's not an official complaint yet, but it's on record. Building a paper trail." I felt a familiar calm settle over me, the same feeling I'd had before difficult missions overseas. When someone declared war on you, the uncertainty ended. All that remained was execution. "How long before they escalate?" "Days, maybe a week. Depends on how confident they're feeling." Benji studied my face. "You're not surprised?" "I found their planning documents last night. They've been working on this for months." I showed him the screenshots I'd taken of Nira's laptop, watching his expression darken as he read through the evidence. "This is good," he said finally. "Really good. But we need to be smart about how we use it. If you just dump this online, they'll claim it's fake or that you hacked her accounts illegally. What do you suggest?" "We make them confess voluntarily, in public, in a way that can't be denied or explained away." The plan we developed was risky, but elegant. Instead of defending against their accusations, we were going to force them to make their move prematurely, in front of witnesses who could verify everything that happened. Step 1 was already in motion. Word of my personal crisis had spread through our social circle, and by noon, I had 3 concerned voicemails from mutual friends. Maya had called twice, fishing for information with the kind of fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. I called her back on the 3rd ring. "Colby, oh my God, I've been so worried about you. Nira said you've been acting really strange lately." "Strange how?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Just different, angry. She's really scared, Colby. She's staying with me because she doesn't feel safe at home. There it was, the narrative they were building, delivered with perfect timing by someone who thought she was helping a friend. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. I've been under a lot of stress with work, but I never meant to make her uncomfortable. Oh, I know you didn't mean to. You're such a sweet guy. But maybe you should talk to someone? A therapist or something? Nira just wants to feel safe again. I let the silence stretch for a moment, as if I was considering her suggestion. Actually, Maya, I think you're right. I've been thinking about some things Nira said, and I realize I might have been unreasonable. About Sunday night, I mean. Really? Her voice brightened with the prospect of drama resolved. Yeah. I was wondering if you could help me plan something. A way to show her I'm sorry and that I want to work on our marriage. Maya was thrilled to be the architect of our reconciliation. Within 20 minutes, she'd suggested a public gesture, a surprise party at the community center where I could apologize to Nira in front of all our friends and prove that I wasn't the unstable husband she'd described. It'll be perfect, Maya gushed. Everyone will see how much you love her, and she'll know she was wrong to be scared. I agreed enthusiastically, even letting Maya take credit for the idea. She promised to handle the invitations and make sure Nira would be there, thinking she was attending a different event. After I hung up, Benji shook his head in admiration. You're really going to do this in front of everyone? They want a public spectacle? They'll get one, just not the kind they're expecting. The rest of Tuesday was spent in preparation. I visited 3 different electronics stores, paying cash for equipment that couldn't be traced back to me. Portable speakers, wireless microphones, a small projector that could connect to any smartphone. Everything I'd need to turn Maya's reconciliation party into something much more memorable. I also made a trip to my lawyer's office, not to file for divorce, but to ensure that everything I was planning was legal. The evidence I'd gathered was obtained from jointly owned devices and accounts, which meant I had every right to access it. The recordings I was planning to make would be done in public spaces where there was no expectation of privacy. You're sure about this approach? My lawyer asked. It's going to be messy. It's already messy, I replied. I'm just making sure everyone can see the mess clearly. Wednesday brought an unexpected complication. Nira called me directly for the first time since Sunday night. Colby, we need to talk. Her voice was different, softer, more vulnerable than it had been in months. For a moment, I almost believed she was calling to apologize, to try to salvage what was left of our marriage. I'm listening, I said. I think we should meet somewhere neutral, maybe with a counselor present. I know things got out of hand on Sunday, and I want to work through this. It was a good performance, I had to give her credit. If I hadn't seen the video of her planning my destruction, I might have believed she was sincere. That sounds reasonable, I said. When were you thinking? How about Friday afternoon? I can set something up with Dr. Martinez. You remember her, right? She did our premarital counseling. Friday, the same day as Maya's surprise party, which Nira didn't know I knew about. She was trying to establish an alibi, a record of attempting reconciliation before she pulled the trigger on whatever she and Aidan had planned. Friday works, I said. Should I pick you up, or do you want to meet there? I'll meet you there. And Colby? Thank you for being willing to try. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen and marveled at the performance. She'd sounded so sincere, so hopeful. If I were a different kind of man, the kind she thought I was, I might have actually shown up to that counseling session, believing we could fix things. Instead, I called Dr. Martinez's office and confirmed that no appointment had been scheduled. Nira was still playing games right up to the end. But Friday would be different. Friday, the game would finally be over. And this time, I was going to win. Thursday evening arrived with the kind of anticipation that usually preceded either triumph or disaster. In my case, I was hoping for both. Triumph for me, disaster for everyone who'd spent the last few months planning my destruction. I was making final preparations in Lila's guest room when my phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Everything's set for tomorrow. Nira thinks she's coming to a book club meeting. This is going to be so beautiful." Beautiful. That was one word for it. Benji arrived at 8 with the last pieces of equipment we'd need. Professional-grade recording devices that would capture everything in crystal-clear audio, and a backup projector in case the first one failed. "You nervous?" he asked, setting up the equipment for a final test. "No," I said, and realized I meant it. "I'm ready." The truth was, I felt calmer than I had in months. All the uncertainty, all the second-guessing, all the wondering if I was imagining things. It was over. Tomorrow, everyone would see exactly what Nira and Aidan had been planning, and there would be no more room for doubt. My phone rang as we were packing everything up. Unknown number, but I recognized Aidan's voice immediately. "Colby? Hey man, I hope it's okay that I'm calling." "Sure, Aidan. What's up?" "I just wanted to check on you. Maya mentioned that you've been having a rough time, and I feel terrible about Sunday night. I should have shut that game down before it got weird." His concern sounded genuine, which made it even more infuriating. This was the same man who'd been planning to steal my wife and destroy my business, now calling to offer comfort. "I appreciate that," I said. "Actually, I'm glad you called. I wanted to apologize for the way I handled things." "You don't need to apologize for anything, man. You had every right to be upset." Still, I overreacted. Nira and I are working things out, and I realize now that I let my insecurities get the better of me. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear Aidan recalculating. "Working things out? That's great, Colby. Really great. Yeah, we're going to counseling tomorrow. Starting fresh, you know? Putting Sunday night behind us and focusing on our marriage." Another pause, longer this time. "Counseling. Tomorrow. Friday afternoon. I'm really optimistic about it." I let my voice carry just enough hope to sound convincing. "Anyway, I should let you go. Thanks for calling, Aidan. It means a lot to know you're in our corner." After I hung up, Benji was grinning. "Think he bought it?" Hook, line, and sinker. He's probably calling Nira right now to tell her that her husband is more gullible than they thought. But I was counting on that call. Every conversation, every lie, every moment of false confidence was pushing them toward tomorrow's confrontation. They thought they were manipulating me, but really I was herding them exactly where I wanted them to go. Friday morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of November day that made everything look sharp and defined. I spent the early hours at my office making sure my clients knew I'd be unavailable for the rest of the day, but would be back to normal business on Monday. "Everything all right, boss?" my assistant asked. "You seem different this week." "Just dealing with some personal stuff," I said, "but it'll be resolved soon." At noon, I drove to the community center where Maya had arranged her surprise party. The building was perfect for what I had planned. A large main room with excellent acoustics, multiple exits, and a projection system already built into the ceiling. Maya was there early, decorating with the kind of enthusiasm that made me almost feel sorry for her. She genuinely believed she was helping to save a marriage, not realizing she was actually orchestrating its very public end. "Colby, you're early. Nira won't be here for another hour." "I wanted to help set up," I said, carrying in the equipment bag Benji and I had prepared. "And I brought some audiovisual stuff. I want to show everyone how much Nira means to me." Maya practically glowed with approval. "That's so romantic. What kind of presentation?" "Just some photos and videos from our relationship. A little trip down memory lane before we start fresh." She helped me connect my laptop to the projection system, chattering excitedly about how surprised and touched Nira would be. If she noticed that I was also setting up recording equipment, she didn't mention it. By 2 o'clock, the room was full of our mutual friends, about 30 people who'd come expecting a book discussion and stayed for what Maya promised would be the most beautiful reconciliation ever. Nira arrived at 2:15, looking confused but pleased by the crowd. She was dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual, exactly the kind of outfit that would photograph well for social media posts about her marriage being back on track. Aidan arrived 10 minutes later, which confirmed my suspicion that they'd coordinated their timing. He hung back near the entrance, trying to look like he was just there to support a friend. "Surprise!" Maya called out, and the room erupted in applause. Nira's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, confusion, calculation, and finally, performance-ready joy. "Oh my God, what is this?" "Colby organized it," Maya announced. "He wanted to show everyone how much he loves you and how sorry he is for Sunday night." All eyes turned to me, and I felt that familiar calm settle over me one last time. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "I know this is unusual, but I wanted to share something important with all of you. Something about truth and games, and what happens when both get out of hand." I clicked the remote in my hand, and the first image appeared on the screen behind me. A photo of Nira and me on our wedding day, both of us smiling like we believed in forever. 3 years ago, Nira and I promised to love and honor each other. We promised to be honest, to be faithful, to be partners in everything. The room was quiet now, sensing that this wasn't going the way Maya had planned. But sometimes people change. Sometimes they decide that promises are just games, and games don't have to follow any rules. I clicked again, and the screen filled with a screenshot of Nira's bank records, the hotel charges, the expensive dinners, the cash withdrawals near Aidan's apartment. The silence in the room became absolute. Sunday night, my wife chose another man during a game of truth or dare. She told me to come find her when the game was over. I looked directly at Nira, whose face had gone completely white. "Well, Nira, the game is over." And then I played the video. The recording filled the room with perfect clarity. Nira's voice, unmistakable and cruel. "He's so predictable. He'll try to be reasonable, try to work things out. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll have everything we need." 30 people watched in complete silence as my wife and my former best friend discussed destroying my life with the casual enthusiasm of people planning a vacation. The audio was crystal clear, the video sharp enough to see their faces, their expressions, their complete lack of remorse. "Colby? He's never fought for anything in his life. He'll roll over and disappear, just like he always does." I watched Nira's reflection in the darkened windows as her recorded voice filled the room. Her face had gone from white to gray, and she was gripping the back of a chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Aidan had started moving toward the exit, but Benji, who'd arrived during the screening, was blocking the door with the kind of casual authority that suggested leaving wasn't an option. When the video ended, the silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Then Maya, bless her heart, broke it with the kind of question that cut straight to the bone. "Nira, is this real?" All eyes turned to my wife, who looked like she was calculating whether she could somehow talk her way out of this. I could see her mind working, searching for an explanation, an excuse, anything that might salvage the situation. It's not what it looks like," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" I said, clicking to the next slide. "Because it looks like you and Aidan have been planning to destroy my reputation, steal my clients, and force me out of town so you could take over my life." The new image showed their text messages, months of them, planning everything from the false police report to the fake counseling session she'd tried to set up as an alibi. "You filed a police report claiming I was stalking you," I continued, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "You told our friends I was unstable. You planned to accuse me of domestic violence to get a restraining order." "Colby, please," Nira started, but I cut her off. You withdrew thousands of dollars in cash to pay for hotel rooms where you could plan my destruction. You researched my business contracts to figure out how to steal my clients. You even picked out new furniture for our house after you thought I'd be gone. Each revelation hit the room like a physical blow. I could see our friends' faces changing as they processed what they were hearing. These weren't mistakes or misunderstandings. This was a deliberate, calculated campaign to destroy someone's life. But here's my favorite part, I said, clicking to the final slide. The screen filled with a photo of Nira and Aidan at dinner last week, toasting with champagne and looking like they were celebrating something special. The timestamp showed it was taken the same night she'd called me crying about work stress and asked me to pick up dinner because she was too exhausted to cook. This was Tuesday night, I said, while I was at home making your favorite soup because you said you were sick. That's when Nira finally broke. "You don't understand," she screamed, her composure cracking completely. "You don't know what it's like being married to someone who never fights for anything. Someone who just accepts everything and never stands up for himself." The irony was beautiful. She was angry at me for not fighting, while simultaneously being destroyed by the fact that I'd finally decided to fight back. "You wanted me to disappear quietly," I said. "To roll over and let you take everything. Sorry to disappoint you." Aidan finally found his voice from across the room. "This is insane, Colby. You're having some kind of breakdown." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. "Because I have you on tape from last night, helping me plan a romantic getaway for the wife you've been sleeping with. Want me to play that too?" His face went white as he realized how thoroughly he'd been played. "All of you," I said, addressing the room, "have been watching this happen for weeks. Maya, you told me that Nira was getting tired of being married to a project manager. Jennifer, you asked her at the party if Aidan was better than me. Everyone knew what was happening except the one person who deserved to know." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. They'd been entertained by the drama when they thought I was oblivious. Now that they realized I'd been documenting everything, their complicity felt less amusing. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Nira, you can keep the house. I never want to see it again anyway. But you'll be paying the mortgage alone because I'm removing my name from everything as of Monday." "You can't do that," she said. "Actually, I can. My lawyer confirmed it yesterday. Adultery voids our prenuptial agreement, which means you get to keep all the debt too." I turned to Aidan, who was still frozen near the door. "As for you, I've already sent copies of everything to your boss, your ex-wife, and your current girlfriend. Yes, I know about Jennifer from accounting. Apparently, you're not as exclusive with Nira as she thought." Nira's head snapped toward Aidan. "What girlfriend?" "Didn't he tell you?" I asked with mock surprise. 3 months you've been planning your future together, and he's been hedging his bets the whole time. Watching them turn on each other was almost anticlimactic after everything else, but it was satisfying in its own way. Nira started screaming at Aidan about lies and betrayal, while he tried to explain that Jennifer didn't mean anything, that Nira was the only one who mattered. "Funny how that works," I said to the room. "Cheaters never expect to be cheated on." Maya was crying now, realizing how thoroughly she'd been used. "Nira, how could you do this? I thought you loved Colby." "Love?" Nira laughed bitterly. "I love the idea of him. The stable husband, the nice house, the perfect life. But I never loved him. And there it was. The truth I'd suspected but never heard, spoken out loud. Well, I said, gathering my equipment, at least we're finally being honest." I headed for the door, where Benji stepped aside to let me pass. "Colby, wait," Nira called after me. "We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." I stopped and looked back at her one last time. She was standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of her reputation, still trying to manipulate her way out of the consequences of her choices. "The game's over, Nira," I said. "You chose him during Truth or Dare, remember? You told me to come find you when it was finally over. I gestured to the room full of people who would never look at her the same way again. Well, here I am. Game over. I walked out of the community center into the crisp November air, leaving behind 3 years of marriage, a house full of memories, and a life that had never really been mine to begin with.